Hi, my name is Ed Ho from Toronto, Canada, and this is my master's capstone thesis for the Energy Policy and Climate program at Johns Hopkins University. The title of my presentation is Strengthening the North American Nuclear Supply Chain, a framework for Canada-US collaboration in the deployment of new nuclear. I am in Dr. Zachary's section, who is the EPC director, and Alex Gilbert was my project mentor. I'd like to give a shout out to Alex for being one of the professors of the nuclear course with Dr. Jenkin, and they both inspired me to want to go ahead and continue on the nuclear path. As an introduction, the purpose of the research was to perform a comparative analysis of the nuclear supply chain in Canada and the United States. The work compared current nuclear developments and capabilities through a qualitative review of proficiencies in each country with a specific focus on new nuclear development. And further to this analysis, there were policy suggestions that were made to maximize proficiencies, leverage existing resources, and to pursue opportunities to the benefit of both countries with the goal to accelerate development. Basically, how can Canada and the United States strategically benefit from integrating their respective nuclear supply chain proficiencies? I have to say I was really lucky in that I got to go to a number of conferences. I went to the World Nuclear Association in September of last year in London, which was a great conference. In February this year, I got to go to the Canadian Nuclear Association Symposium. That was completely enlightening. And then just a couple months ago, I got to go to the Guggenheim Nuclear Investment Conference in New York, which was completely different because of who was at the conference. And it was really interesting to get to hear from people from the Department of Energy specifically. It was at the Canadian Nuclear Association conference that there was a real big stir about the Inflation Reduction Act. And everybody in Canada is also trying to deploy small modular reactors. At the same time, there is an absolute trend in deglobalization because of COVID and the war in the Ukraine. And really, energy security concerns are top of mind for everybody. Because of these security concerns, this led to a lot of supply chain investigations and led to a lot of onshoring or ally shoring, meaning creating new domestic secure supply chains or with those of your allies. So with all of these dynamics going on in the world, I basically got to my main topic of my paper, which is doing a comparative analysis of supply chain strengths and weaknesses of Canada and the United States, with the goals, number one, to see if we can make a more secure supply chain, and also number two, to collaborate instead of compete head to head to achieve the same goals, because there was a lot that we could do to help each other. There's another interesting narrative where Canada and the United States took two separate paths to nuclear power development. Canada developed their homegrown CANDU heavy water reactors, and the United States followed a path for pressurized light water reactors, and that led to different competencies overall. One of the bigger conclusions in the supply chain evaluation was that Canada and the US have some complementary proficiencies. Canada has great natural resources, which include strategic minerals for building reactors and alloys, and uranium, which is in the fuel cycle. On the US side, they are building uranium enrichment capacity. Both the natural resources and the enrichment capacity are critical to the development path of these new nuclear reactors. Another great opportunity for the existing nuclear fleet is in license extensions and refurbishments. This could lead to a real revitalization of the supply chain and would help fund other capabilities such as advanced manufacturing. The policy suggestions that came out of the review were pretty simple. Number 1, commit to reactor designs. Number 2, commit to a contract. Number 3, build on mutual strengths and collaborate. And number 4, go faster. Now, it may seem simple to say go faster, but in the discussion, there are many opportunities for both countries to cooperate in regulatory reform and also to share capacities across borders without any friction, in the hopes of creating some sort of freer market for development. In the conclusion and the project outcome, I used the only commercial order signed to date as an example of how to implement these policies. There are many development projects on the go, but this is the only commercial contract signed. As far as major challenges go, I thought, number 1, that the information sources that were more industry and government provided rather than academic papers was interesting. In sorting through some of the information from industry and government, there are often opinions incorporated with the facts. So to get the full picture objectively on a topic sometimes is a little more challenging. The second challenge I thought was interesting is that this industry is so rapidly evolving that I would wake up some days and the world has changed. Somebody has announced a contract, somebody has completed a development goal, somebody has gotten an approval, and there's always the risk that something would come out and I would have to change direction on my paper. That's part of the exciting part of policy. You're writing in real time. And some of the barriers that I had to overcome in this project, number 1 was focus. The journey was long. I changed my topic a number of times, and there are no shortage of papers to be written in this arena. I guess the second big barrier was that this is not a terribly open industry. It's competitive, and people don't want to disclose their competitive advantages because it still is a competitive industry. Though I would really much like to thank the World Nuclear Association, the Canadian Nuclear Association, and also Ontario Power Generation, who were incredibly generous in giving me access to their wealth of information and people. Without their help, I couldn't have gotten a lot of this done. And here are some of my references. If you want the full list, you can find them on my paper.